Hi everyone, I'm Matthew Gillespie. I'm with Entering Orbit Records, and today we have an amazing artist who is making headlines all around and is making national tours and is making headlines in multiple shows coming up. We have Hemlock here with us. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. My name is Carolina. I have a project called Hemlock. I'm from Louisiana, but I'm based out of Chicago now, and I've got a new album coming out soon, so we're just trying to get on the road, and I'm really looking forward to sharing this music with everyone.
Awesome. So right now you are based in Chicago. Has there been any challenges in the Chicago scene since you are DIY folk, or has Chicago been very welcoming with your sound?
It's a good question, and I think the answer is both. There have definitely been challenges in that, in this particular time, I think it's obviously still tough to have a lot of house shows, which is where I feel like I really thrive, is in a setting of a lot of intimacy. And through the pandemic, it seems like a lot of the more DIY scenes in Chicago have kind of dissolved or are reforming in a different way. So we're in this very transitory state where you kind of have to go through more formal avenues of booking through venues, and it seems like everyone's schedules are perpetually full right now in a way that I haven't experienced before. Like, I haven't run into a lot of issues booking shows across the country, but Chicago has been the toughest egg to crack for booking, both with venues and with other bands, just because everybody seems to be always booked all the time. But I also think that once I get into those corners and I'm playing a show or have a space to play the show, I'm very well received. People have been very welcoming in that regard. I think it's just the initial getting somebody to want to listen or to want to play the show is what has been harder than I expected living here.
You bring up intimacy being a large part of who you are and what you think is important when you're live shows. And I think a very large part of your music is this intimate sound that you deliver as well. I think you have this raw emotion behind every track that you put out, both in your vocals and the instrumentation of it. Everything is simple but delicate in a beautiful way, and it makes all the listeners definitely think of the meanings behind the music and exactly what each word means when you sing it. I guess what I have to ask about that is, can you give us a little bit of insight when you're making this music?
I think in my creative process, I really try not to schedule appointments with myself to write. You can kind of for me, it's a bodily thing. I feel like I can feel it when my cup is overspilling and I need to sit down and get something out. And so I often end up writing songs that are loosely autobiographical in one sitting. I'll sit down and just hyperfixate on it and not realize how time is even passing until 3 or 4 hours have passed and I've just been playing the same new idea until it feels relatively finished. And so in that way, they're almost like journal entries, I guess, the way you would sit down and try to write about your day or write about something difficult that you're going through or something that amazed you. It's a way for me of the catharsis of sitting down and getting something off of my chest and getting something out and then moving along with my day or with my night or with my feelings.
So with the meaning behind it and with your creative process, is there a song that means more to you than the other songs, or is there a song that you personally that you've written more than others?
I'm actually there's a song that stands out to me because I liked it less when I wrote it than the rest of them.
Okay.
Most of my songs I feel very attached to in some way. They all feel very personal to me and they all feel very special and they all accomplish different but similar things, I think. But a song that is almost like a joke to me is Wallingford Bossa off of the Seattle EP.
Sweet
just didn't release it. I like wrote it and thought I was just going to throw it away. Like it was going to be one of those songs that I sat down and wrote and never played again. But a friend of mine came over to visit me when I was living in Seattle when I'd written that song. And I played it for them, and it was my friend Reed. And I was like, yeah, I don't know. I don't really like this song. And Reed was like, I love it. And I ended up putting it out, and now it is like still the most popular song that I have released, and one that I've played live at almost every show that I've played since I wrote it. That I think is like a great irony of songwriting too, is sometimes you need like a little push of external validation just to feel affirmed in what you've made. And it's been very unpredictable what people have been receptive towards and what songs have kind of slipped under the radar more, which is kind of the opposite, I guess, of the answer to your question, but stood out to me for the opposite reason.
I think it was like amazing going through your music, and like on your top listened music on Spotify, you have Talk Soon and Garbage Truck, both very like the meaning behind it really deep. And then you go to this, the Wellingford Bossa, and it's like this completely different change. And you're like, oh, this is a little fun. And I think it adds to the fun of the music that you put out. It's an exciting like turn there.
Thank you. Yeah. So much of what I write is informed by like place and time, you know, so that one stands out from the albums, the songs that are coming out on the album Talk Soon, because in Seattle I was like playing more like amplified instruments with a full band, and I like that, you know, I guess my music can keep people guessing in that way. Speaking
of your other releases though, one thing that I saw that I personally thought was a little interesting was this creative expression, not that you have with each individual release, but with the albums themselves that you've put out. Each of them, most of them I'll say, have 31 songs on it because they're based off of a different month of the year. Can you give us a little insight on why you decided to do that?
Yes, that is actually an ongoing project. It's funny, the way the Hemlock folders work in my brain, I guess, is that these album releases have one space in this project and one space in my head. You know, they're like in one corner of my mental room, and then everything else kind of falls into a different corner. Those are my Song a Day projects, and it started with February in 2019, and then it did December in 2020 and August in 2021. And the grand goal for these releases is after 12 years to have the entire calendar blocked out. So essentially 1 month out of the year for every year for 12 years, I will write a song every day of whatever month that I choose, with no repeats, you know. So we've got February, December, and August so far, and then whatever month feels right this year, I'll do it again.
Now let's talk about that, because that's got to be challenging to write one song every day for a month. Have you ever experienced just like a roadblock where you're like, I just don't know anything to write today?
Yeah, and I think, well, when I did the first one, February, I kind of was doing it just for myself, didn't even know if I was going to release it, but it felt very important to me to maintain the practice of it. And so there were a few days on that one where I was like, I genuinely cannot write today. I was going through a hard breakup at the time too, and so it was a way to try and reconnect with myself, and also process. And there were some days where I was just too emotionally exhausted or just too physically exhausted to do that. And so I guess cheating doesn't feel like the right word because it's my project and I'm allowed to do whatever I want with it. But there were a few days that I played covers instead. And those are notated in the project as well. But I think for the most part, as the project is going on, every time I do it, I feel more and more able to not sort of skip a day of original content, because the boundaries that I'm giving myself are getting looser and looser, to where it's become like a habit to just sit down and kind of trust the first thing that I'm writing for that day, like the first chords that come out, the first lyrics that come out, and really not trying to refine it as much as I have with other work, and just trusting that sometimes what you do first is enough, you know, like trusting that you don't have to be so hard on yourself to have the idea of this like polished, finished product. You know, like there's one on, I think December, that's like December 7th is Costco Hot Dog. And that literally was just like an instrumental Casio song that I wrote on a little keyboard the day that I got a Costco hot dog for the first time. So it's just allowing yourself to trust your body and trust your mind to put out whatever it is that is there, and not have to search for it as much, you know?
Yeah, I think part of the unique charm that is the music that you put out there is this, you have these, I believe I talked about it before, you have these deep songs, but then, like you said, you have these little fun, quirky songs like Costco Hot Dog, or the bossa that you put out, and like I said, it's like this unique spin, and it's always something new, and I think these albums really showcase that, and it gets people really excited to listen to new music. And I know recently you actually had the opportunity of going on a Some of That Please performance. Can you tell us a little bit about that experience and how you chose the songs that you decided to perform on that?
Yeah, I think Some of That Please, they're geniuses. Alex and Henry are just they are incredible at what they do. They're based out of Austin, Texas, which is somewhere that I've been visiting and that I feel like I have a deep creative community in because I'm from Louisiana, and so it was the first place that I played other than my home state. So I actually was introduced to Alex and Henry of Some of That Please through my friend Lindsay Barrel, who's like also a collaborator and a huge inspiration for me. And so she kind of wrangled them, and we found a free time, and they came to her house and recorded me playing in her kitchen, in Lindsay's kitchen. And I've stayed at Lindsay's a number of times, so I felt very comfortable in that space. But the hardest part was figuring out what songs I was going to play. It felt like the right business move, I guess, you know, to play a song that was going to be on the upcoming album. Through Sometimes, the one that Lindsay is actually playing with me on in that performance, it felt right because that song was, you know, it's like my only pandemic song, where I wrote it in May of 2020 at the beginning of lockdown in a place that was very tender and very much about being at home and going through the motions. And so being in Lindsay's home and that very cozy, comfortable space, it just felt like it matched the character. And on the album, that song is recorded on piano. I recorded it on piano, and so this is an opportunity as well for me to have the guitar version heard by someone, you know, other than myself. And I love the idea of having that song exist in multiple forms in the world. So that one was an easier choice. And then the other episode that we did of Sky Baby, which is a song off the August album, I believe it's August 16th on that project. But that one is one that just seemed to be getting stuck more in people's ears when I was playing it live. And it's a love song, and I think I have a lot of melancholy in a lot of my songs, and so this was a way to just emphasize like just joy and love and romance, and is also a little silly in its lyrical content where it's just metaphors the whole way through. So Lindsay actually helped me pick that one because I was stuck between a few options, and she was like, this one is getting stuck in my head. So again, you know, another moment of external validation that helped me make a decision.
With the different shows coming up that you have, it's going to also help people in a live setting also understand who you are and your music, and understand exactly what it is that makes you tick, but not only that, but express themselves as well. And I know that you have a couple shows coming up. You have one March 3rd at the Golden Dagger. That one's going to be with Elaine May and Boy Romeo. And then you have one on March 11th in Austin. Are you excited for those shows? I mean, they're coming up pretty soon.
Yeah, I am. I met Elaine May and Boy Romeo, John of Boy Romeo, at in Humboldt Park in Chicago. We were doing a song circle that a friend Shelby put together called Strummer's Grove, and so this is a nice revisitation or a reunion of the people who met outside in that park. They're wonderful songwriters and so kind as people. And Golden Dagger too is just a really wonderful space where like 100% of the tickets go towards the artists. They're like a very musician-forward venue, and have been like one of the most welcoming venues to me personally in Chicago. They also actually, their venue caught on fire a couple of months ago, and so it's also nice that they're back and like up and running and, you know, trucking through all the obstacles of the past year or two. But and then, of course, the album release show in Austin, Texas, with Christelle Bofale. That is going to be a highlight of my year. I've been waiting to release this album for such a long time, and that show is on the day that that Talk Soon actually comes out. And Christelle's music is so incredible, and it's going to be another just great honor to have them playing with me, and I'll have a full band as well that night. So yeah, I know it's like a break from the solo project sort of energy that's been going on, and looking forward to the feeling of being energized by having other people collaborate on stage, and very grateful, you know, and just doing all what we can to keep each other safe in these settings.
Yeah, I don't necessarily know when this particular interview is going to release, if it's going to release in time for March 3rd, but if it is released in time, be sure to go check out those shows. You know you want to. It's going to be a great time. You're going to have a live band. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be this whole different experience. It's going to be great.
And if it comes out after those shows, then hope you made it, and if not, you probably missed out.
Yeah, you most definitely missed out if you missed that show. With your new album, Talk Soon, that's coming out, obviously there's going to be a lot of new music. Is there any particular track that you're excited for people to experience, or is there just anything in general that you are excited to have people listen to?
Yes, of course. Naturally. Like I said, I think before in this interview, it's the longest that I've gone like holding on to an album or sitting on an album before releasing it. Like some of these songs were written in 2018, so it's been years in the works. And so that gives me, like, the anticipation's been building for so long. I definitely have an intention or a hope that people will listen to it all the way through. It's kind of a concept album in that regard, I suppose. Of it, the track list is very intentional, and I'm hoping that, you know, people can and will listen to it from start to finish. But that being said, there are a few tracks that I look forward to for different reasons. One of them is Silver City Embers. That's the third track on the album, and that one has a little drum machine in it, so I think it's kind of, you know, like a nod to tracks more similar to Wallingford Bossa, where people kind of like bob their head a little bit more, start grooving, and that one's going to be fun for that reason. And then Songbird is another song on the album that is the oldest one of all 17 tracks. Whopper of an album. It is the oldest song on Talk Soon, and one that I really look forward to getting off my chest for that reason. And it was the one that I produced the least. Like, I think I had an idea of the instrumentation and things that I wanted for all of these songs, but Songbird I had no idea what to do with. I think because it was so old and I'd sat on it for too long, I kind of was just clueless. You know, you pass that point where it's been so long that you no longer know what to do with it. And my friends and collaborators, Casey and Olaf, I was running late to recording one day, and I walked in and they were just running that track that I had laid down the vocals and guitar for already, and Casey was bowing electric guitar over it. And it sounds, I mean, it was just exactly what it needed. And it was one of those moments of musical trust where I walked in late to my own recording session and was like moved to tears immediately that they had figured out what the missing piece was, and I hadn't even had to be there. And so that is a really beautiful moment and memory that I associate with that song, and I hope it comes through. And then Green is the last one that I'll give a little shout out to, because that track was almost the title track of the album, because the word green comes up a few times in the album, and is also the title of the song, and also the idea of being green as in being like new to something, or young, or naive, I guess, is like another theme that runs through this album. So it's like kind of the alternate title track, and it's got some crazy production on it that is, again, kind of far from what people think of as like the Hemlock sound, I think. It's got some vocal plugins running on it that are kind of more reminiscent of like Alex G or Frank Ocean, where there's like some octaves going on, where there's like this high voice and a low voice that are both mine, but, edited, and like more crazy keyboard sounds and pedals, and grander production for that one. So I think it's fun.
So before we wrap up, is there anything that you want to bring up? Anything that we haven't talked about that you wanted to bring up before we end it?
Yeah, I think something that I haven't mentioned at all yet is the importance of like phone folk or phone fi music as a concept behind Hemlock. I record all those song a day projects fully on my phone with very little like mixing and mastering. And then on the Talk Soon album, there's also a lot of found footage of field recordings that I've done, and also voicemail tracks that kind of weave and tie together the whole album. And so I think that Hemlock is like rooted around this idea of accessibility, and if that means recording through your phone, then I think that's something that's perfectly acceptable, and challenges the music industry in a way that I like. So I just wanted to shout out to phone recording, because I think it's incredible and wonderful, and enables so many people to record that wouldn't have the means to otherwise. Yeah, I've got an album release show as well in Chicago at the Hideout on April 21st. So that's another date to keep in mind. But other than that, I'll be touring, and I look forward to sharing this album. And again, thank y'all so much for having me entering Orbit. I really appreciate your time and your questions.
Be sure to check out Hemlock on all streaming services. Her new album's going to be coming out relatively soon. Talk Soon is coming out March 11th. Be sure to check it out. Be sure to check out the sessions that are on YouTube, and all the other recordings that she does have. But for now, I'm Matthew Gillespie from Entering Orbit Records, and thank you for tuning in to this interview series. Peace.
Thank you.